line, you're on the air. Hello.
Hello, Art.
Yes.
Hi. I don't have a whole lot of time.
Well, look, let's begin by finding out whether you're using this line properly or not. You now.
A former employee.
Former employee.
I was let go on a medical discharge about a week ago, and I've kind of been running across the country. Oh man, I don't know where to start. They're gonna they'll triangulate on this position really soon.
So you can't spend a lot of time on the phone. So give us something quick.
Okay. Okay. What we're thinking of as aliens, Art, they're extra dimensional beings.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Black and Blurred.
Hi.
That's Darren.
It's me.
I'm Brandon. Guys, we were gone for a week.
Yeah.
I wish I could give you a reason why. We just didn't do anything. I mean, that's all. Rest.
Father's Day.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Is that what it did?
I mean, but we typically record. We try to do something either at the end of the week or that Sunday if it's not. And
Yeah.
we didn't do anything at the end of the week, and then Father's Day was that Sunday.
Yeah.
Happy belated Father's Day to all the fathers out there. So let's get right into this because I want to highlight some people who've been encouraging and showing some support, and then I want to dive right into this topic of UFOs and aliens because it's actually a prevalent conversation today. You may not know that. People listening may not know that, but there are some new things that are coming out, and it's resurfaced this conversation that was once kind of a fringe.
Yeah, I remember being UE.
Yeah, tinfoil type thing.
Yeah. Signs.
Oh man. Okay, we'll get into that. So real quick, we have some new, just encouraging posts on the what is this called? The
iTunes?
Instagram. Yeah, Instagram. No, it's iTunes. It's iTunes. I'm stupid. One by Ali Holland. He said, "I've been very encouraged by this podcast so far. I'm so grateful for these men who are committed to biblical truth and love. Their voices are desperately needed in our culture and in this particular time. May God continue to bless both of you as you glorify God. Hoping this podcast continues to reach more and more people. Thank you for the edifying content." Well, Ali, we really appreciate it. Thank you very much for your rating and your comment. We also hear from Kenny BCC. This is a good friend of ours, actually. Says, "Keep it going. Here's to more episodes sharing the light in this dark world." We have another comment from Sonora Gucci, who also, I know that name. She follows us on Instagram as well.
Yeah.
That's Sonora. "I love this podcast. I always listen while working out. Only place I can give my undivided attention as a mom. I can definitely understand that. As a husband who watches his wife with the same struggle. I laugh, cry, and think deeply with these guys. But most of all, I hear the gospel saturated in everything to discuss. Keep it up." Thank you very much, Sonora. We really appreciate it. And that is our desire for all of those encouraging posts, is to edify the church, glorify God, and prayerfully through this welcome new brothers and sisters to the kingdom. As we shine light in the darkness, Ephesians 5:11. We don't simply not partner with darkness, but we expose it as well. So that's what we do here at Black and Blurred. Thank you, guys. And these help us. These comments on iTunes, subscribe to the podcast, leave a comment on whatever your platform is, if it allows for subscription and comment or ratings. Give us a high rating and leave a comment because it helps make the podcast more viewable. Also, we have a Patreon. Support us on Patreon. www.patreon.com World Wide Web. Patreon.com/Black and Blurred. We have multiple levels of support there. So go check us out there and prayerfully consider supporting us that we could actually grow this podcast and reach more people with truth and the gospel. And they aren't distinct.
Yeah.
Well, let's dive in. If you think about like alien movies, what immediate movies come to mind?
Classics. E.T.
E.T. Now, I don't know. This might be sacrilege. E.T. is boring to me.
Oh, I think it's awful.
It's so boring to
I
me.
think it's an awful movie.
It's a classic.
For that time, it was like, oh wow,
it's one of those classics
flying
where
through the sky on a bike. It was so trash.
but now like I just don't feel like getting into it. So if I'm in a group of people talking about ET, I'm like, yeah, James Cameron.
I remember we were in Universal Studios and we got on the ET ride. It was so garbage.
It has to be one of the oldest ones there,
yeah,
right?
it was the oldest ride there, and it's just like the movie.
Yeah.
Like you literally ride through this thing 5 miles an hour while little animatronic creatures fall out of the woods. Like you can hear them squeaking. Like it's so garbage, but it's a classic.
Yeah.
For people who are 80s babies. Alien versus Predator.
Or Aliens first.
Yeah.
Aliens. Yeah. I mean, there's a whole series.
Yeah,
of those.
no, there's too many of them.
There was a whole series of those. I think more along the lines of like visitation. Obviously, Aliens is like that, but it's more kind of like horror and action type rather than this social crisis because aliens exist. So I would say E.T. is that, but it's more fluffy. Right. It's like, hey, E.T., a little cute, cuddly, gremlin-looking alien. And,
Lilo and Stitch.
Hey, look. Obviously, Signs. I think Signs is more eerie because it leaves things to the imagination.
Yeah.
And then like reveals it.
Right.
And there are some people who probably have a problem with some aspects of Signs because they have this high tech, maneuvering and ability to reach Earth,
like
but
the
they
crop
can't.
Circles?
Yeah. But they can't get out of a cupboard.
Yeah.
So simple things. But I respect M. Night Shyamalan with that. Independence Day. That's coming up.
Yeah, it is.
Independence Day is coming up. July 4th. Men in Black.
Yeah.
I mean, it's everywhere.
It's a lot of alien movies.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. I'm sure even with that small list, we didn't even scratch the surface really.
Men in Black is more, I would say, more sinister than you think.
Yeah, it is.
Like, a lot of the aliens pose as humans.
And it's hidden from us by government.
Yeah.
In that movie. I would say that even though you and I probably believe this already, but based on the new kind of just like things that are surfacing regarding not just UFO sightings, what's become more, I guess, noteworthy is that government officials are responding to the sightings. Like the actual sightings, and have said, hey, this UFO phenomenon is real and we have nothing to offer about it. We're confused.
Right.
We don't know what this is. And so with that existing today and in our long history of all these movies, it sort of seems like grooming.
Yeah.
Now.
Mm-hmm.
You
mean now?
No. I'm talking about with the bookends.
Right.
Knowing all those movies have existed.
In
now
hindsight.
Now knowing what we know about these like more and more prevalent sightings, but not just the sightings, because the sightings have existed for millennia actually. But now the conversation where prominent voices are speaking on these things, from government officials to Hollywood celebrities to former band members, was Tom DeLonge, Blink 182. They're dedicating their lives to researching this stuff. And at the end of the day, most of what the consensus is that this phenomenon is real, and we don't know what's going on.
Yeah, we don't know what it is.
The Air Force is releasing surveillance footage. Navy is releasing surveillance footage of things. And if you guys haven't heard about this, just Google it. Google it. Now, this is where a little bit of our tinfoil, I won't speak for you, but I can speak for you. This is where a little bit of my tinfoil is coming out. I always squint my eyes when information like that is easily accessible.
Yeah. Any information that they don't want us to have, we don't have.
We don't have it. Or you got to work hard to get it.
You got to work hard, yeah.
At a cost.
Certainly can't use Google.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Oh, yeah. Definitely not Google.
You certainly can't find it on Google if it's actually controversial and it's actually truth. It's not on Google.
Yeah, it won't be on Google. Use DuckDuckGo, guys. Don't use Google as a search engine. So now so let's start from the beginning here. Let's start from how a person would be treated if they were one of those I was abducted by alien people.
I don't know, like a Trump supporter.
Touche. Touche.
But yeah, I mean, it's easily dismissed.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Like,
I mean, the clip we played at the beginning of the podcast, somebody probably thinks that dude is out of his mind.
Yeah. And if you don't know that clip is from a radio show called Art Bell. I'm hosted by Art Bell. Yeah. What was the title of that radio show? But it was hosted by Art Bell. That episode was in 1997, where allegedly a former employee of Area 51 called in a frantic state, claiming that aliens were not who they say they were, and that they're extra dimensional beings. And we'll get to that. And this is going to be a 2-part series, guys. So we're going to talk through some things. Now, here's a disclaimer about that clip specifically. I just wanted to play. I wanted to grab something that was sensational and play it, but I do want to give context and give a disclaimer. That same caller ended up calling back months later. Did you know this?
No.
Yeah, that same caller ended up calling back months later saying, "Hey, I'm the Area 51 caller. I do this thing often. I call radio shows and I play a character, and I didn't expect for it, to go the way it went. But I really love this show, Art. I didn't mean to do that. I was just being frantic." And he tried to replay it with the pants and the frantic breathing and everything else. And so, the question is out there is like, well, is this dude actually that guy? Was it all a hoax, or is this dude doing damage control?
Yeah. The Clintons trying to suicide him.
Things like that. Now, here's an interesting thing about the original episode when he called in. The studio, Art Bell's radio studio, shut down in the middle of that call.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing shut down. They had to reboot.
Like a blackout?
Yeah.
Wow.
You can still find this clip, guys. Look up Art Bell, Area 51 caller. And you can find that clip and listen to it. I just thought that was always very interesting. And then you have are you familiar with Heaven's Gate? So Heaven's Gate was this religious cult. 2 people. What are their names? I think I have it here. Bonnie Nettles and Marshall Applewhite. And they changed their names to some cultish nicknames or whatever. But they believed that they were extraterrestrials from a different planet, and they were eagerly awaiting their way home. Okay. And they gained a bunch of people. They gained a bunch of followers. And here's the thing. People responded to them with that same response. You're crazy. You're crazy. Get out of here. Dismiss you. Now, here's what we're saying about why you shouldn't call people crazy. We're not, and we've talked about this in the past, right? We've talked
about anything.
Yeah, about anything.
Yeah.
It's because, quoting Dave Chappelle, it's dismissive. Now, what we mean by that is not that people who say extraordinary things should automatically be believed. I am saying that when people say extraordinary things, it should merit your attention until you have evidence that it can be dismissed.
Right.
Now, why is that important with Heaven's Gate people? Obviously, we do not believe that they were extraterrestrials who came from another planet and were eagerly awaiting to get home. But there were people who did believe them. And these people became famous, the leaders of the cult. They became famous.
They weren't the leaders of the cult?
Huh?
They weren't the leaders?
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying the leaders of the cult became famous.
Okay.
They became very famous. They were on TV shows. People were interviewing them. They were talking about it. Like they were just these social pets where it's like, these are the Heaven's Gate people.
Yeah.
Let's get them on here. Yeah. So basically people were just like, if we were one of those people, we would invite them on the podcast so that they can just be on the podcast and we can get some clicks and some views and some listens.
Yeah.
And things like that. Meanwhile, it took a drastic turn because in March 97 with the Haley-Bopp comet.
Okay, I remember that.
They believed that was their way back home. So what did they do? They led their cult to commit suicide so they can shed their earthly flesh covering and return back to their natural selves and go back home. And all of this is happening. They're gearing up for that. They're planning this while people are dismissing them.
Yeah, calling them crazy.
Yeah, not caring.
And nobody's
no
saving
one's
their lives.
Yeah. And so that's what I mean by that. There are two bad things that can happen when you call someone crazy. One, you can dismiss the danger they're putting themselves in, or you can dismiss the potential truth they're sharing. Mm-hmm. And so we believe that, well, obviously the Heaven's Gate people existed in the former. They were endangering themselves and others, a lot of people.
Yeah.
So this conversation with UFOs, I believe that it has been blurred. That's why we're doing it on here. Mm-hmm. I think the entire conversation has come from a purely materialistic worldview, which is why you have like evolutionists who were interested in it in the past, looking into it and trying to talk up. You had Neil deGrasse Tyson on his show. What is it called? The Cosmos.
He was talking about Area 51.
Well, he was just talking about the potential of aliens. Now, I think that his stance now is that, look, we don't have any evidence. I mean, if they were here, then we would see them.
They want Martians. Is that what they want?
Yeah, right. Oh, Mars Attacks. That's another one.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, that's goofy, but yeah.
Yeah, Mars Attacks. It's like goofy sinister.
Yeah,
it is, yeah. And I think when the conversation of UFOs comes up, when the conversation of people who have been abducted and things like that comes up, people typically go in like two directions. One, they go in the direction of like the Heaven's Gate people. Mm-hmm. These are the people who hear it and accept it.
Yeah,
they go in the direction of the Heaven's Gate people.
Unhealthy trust and information.
Yeah, and they get absorbed by it to the point where they
are
have to
think about it, bro. I have to think about it, bro. Have you seen that?
No, what is that?
It's this dude. He has a YouTube called H3H3. He's actually pretty popular. Super liberal dude. I don't think he started off that way. Super liberal, but he was talking about the CDC. He was like, look, man, the CDC, it tells us to wear a mask, man. Just listen. It's a bunch of doctors spent their life getting these facts together. Just do what they say, man. You have to think about it, bro. You don't have to think about it. Just do it, bro.
And you know what my big issue is? Not to, you just put us on a rabbit hole, but we're not going to stay here. I'm just going to say this. I don't have an issue with him thinking that.
No, he can think it freely.
That's right. I have an issue with him thinking I should think it.
Yeah.
And then people getting irate that I don't think it. What is wrong with you?
Yeah, that's insane, actually.
What's wrong with you?
You should think about anything and everything.
What is wrong with you?
Don't ever not think.
Yeah, that's dumb. That's dumb. But back on track. People get extremely absorbed by it. And they're completely deceived into, this self-destructive absorption of this thing, like Heaven's Gate people. Or people think it's possible and reduce it to a purely materialistic conversation. And so now we need to look at the cosmos. We need to look at other planets. We need to search in the solar system and outside of the solar system. And we need to go billions of galaxies away to see if there's other life in other areas, because that's the scope of the conversation, right? Either some like mental failure in believing that you are an extraterrestrial or some sort. People are just deceived in that way. Or this is a conversation of physical science,
right?
Natural science. And that if there are aliens, the natural sciences can explain it. Mm-hmm. And so now I think people are stuck today because the natural sciences aren't explaining some things.
That's because people think that science is a thing.
Well, yeah, there is an idol. Science is an idol.
Science doesn't
we're in an
discover
empirical society.
Yeah.
Even Christianity has suffered from that.
Yeah.
And so, I think in Christianity and our pragmatism and our empiricism with things, we have left the supernatural aspect of our faith.
Yeah.
Not mystical. Was I just talking about this at church?
I think so.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, people get confused about mystical and supernatural. And so that's how you end up with Gnosticism, secret knowledge, people dwelling in the New Age and things like that. But we do have a supernatural faith where a man can stand up in front of dead souls and speak a message, and they're resurrected.
Yeah.
And united with the creator of everything. Mm-hmm. That's a supernatural worldview. So I want to go through a couple of things, because when we were like, I don't know, the very beginning.
Yeah, I don't remember even how we got to this.
Well, I think, to be honest with you, it was, well, for me, it was coming to Christ. Yeah. No, I'm saying specifically what came after that, because how I came to Christ was through watching Zeitgeist. Right. You know? Yeah, I had a college professor that was telling a student, a classmate of mine and myself, that Christianity had been debunked, and she pointed us to this documentary. And the documentary I watched, called Zeitgeist, directed by Peter Joseph, it's complete trash. It's actually not good. It's the first section as far as debunking Christianity, because then he goes on and talks about 9/11, talks about taxation. And I don't really have a problem with the things he was saying with regard to that, to be honest with you. But what he was saying about Christianity at the time, I was kind of looking into it, because if it's true that Christianity is false, and I feel justified in the way that I'm living, really. But it was left wanting. So it left me wanting to know.
And it didn't disprove anything.
It didn't disprove anything.
It was the questions.
Well, not only that, it was pretty faulty. Their premise was faulty. One main premise was, hey, Jesus is a copycat. You know how? Because Horus was born on December 25th too. And even with me, and not being a biblical scholar, I'm not even following Christ, I knew, wait, Jesus wasn't born on December 25th.
Yeah, we don't think that.
That's just a day we celebrated. Yeah. The scriptures don't say anything about Jesus' birth date. What in the world? How much more? And that's like at the beginning of the documentary.
That's somebody who didn't even read a Bible.
How much effort did you put in this, bro? Yeah. So through that, and then also through looking at, because I was very interested in, why would he go through so much trouble to making statements about things that are false? Yeah. And so the lens through which I was even reading the Bible was a lens that was up in confrontation with these supernatural claims, right, of these other ancient religions. And the Bible held its weight. Right. The Bible answered every question. Even more so, I was introduced to the author of the Bible, and it transformed me. And so now, through this supernatural transformation that happened in my life, I'm going back to this documentary and these questions of like ancient mystery schools and everything else. And I think that's what started that path, where we got introduced to people like Helena Blavatsky and theosophy and esotericism and these secret societies and these things. And so what we want you to know is that people, very prominent and elite people in this world, are not atheists.
No.
They're not atheists. No, they believe there's a God. We're just at odds with who they say he is.
Bill Schneblin.
Yeah. So we ended up in this thing and just diving into these people and what they believed. And so I'm going to jump around a bit, but I'm going to try to tie the knots and create a bridge with this UFO thing. Because these people, like Helena Blavatsky, is the kind of like creator of theosophy. It's an esoteric religion. And I think I have some stuff here. Let me get her up. Let me not do that. I'll pull it up here. She was Luciferian. Mm-hmm. And something that people need to know about Luciferianism is that it's not Satanism. Those are different. And even in Satanism, the Church of Satan and the Satanic Temple, they're different. Yeah. They have different things. One is rooted in secular humanism, and the other is actually worshiping Satan as a deity. Yeah. Meanwhile, obviously, when you know the truth, you know it's all Satan.
They're all Satan.
But Luciferianism is a bit different in that from the title, they believe that Lucifer, the serpent in the garden, they attribute as Lucifer. And I think majority of us do. I don't. I'm not saying that. It's slightly complicated. It's only because of tradition in Scripture. Tradition in Scripture, we take the name Lucifer, which comes just from the Latin Vulgate for meaning light bearer. We've made it a name, and then we've also attributed it to the serpent in the garden. Meanwhile, the Bible doesn't do that.
Yeah.
The Bible doesn't do that. There is the great enemy. There is the serpent. There is the devil, right? But I don't believe that his name is Lucifer. I think that's just come through tradition. That's all I'm saying. But they believe that serpent in the garden was actual God, the savior of humanity. Why? Because Yahweh was keeping Adam and Eve captive in Eden, and he was keeping them without mental capacity, right?
Yeah.
The tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah.
And Satan opened their eyes.
Yeah, they were slaves to their own minds, basically.
And Satan opened their eyes. Let me read I'm gonna read a excerpt, a quote from Miss Blavatsky. She says this: "It is but natural, even from the dead letter standpoint, to view Satan, the serpent of Genesis, as the real creator and benefactor, the father of spiritual mankind. For it is he who was the harborer of light, bright, radiant Lucifer, who opened the eyes of the automation created by Jehovah, as alleged, and he who was the first to whisper, 'In the day ye eat thereof, ye shall be as Elohim, knowing good and evil.'" And that's from The Secret Doctrine on page 243. So this twisted belief.
And where do you get that?
From Satan, from the enemy.
Yeah.
That's where you get that from. And so it's pretty explicit. It's like, hey, we believe him. Mm-hmm. We believe this lie.
I also believe that Yahweh exists.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, Satan knows Yahweh exists. And so she was she published a magazine called Lucifer Magazine in 1887. I mean, this was all in society, esotericism. And these things, in a very subtle way, leak into our culture and society today. Going back to movies, how many movies are actually plagued with magic and sorcery and things like that? Mm-hmm. And that's a form of grooming. I don't go so far as to say Christians shouldn't watch it, but I definitely know that Christians need to be discerning in what they watch.
Guard their hearts.
They need to guard their hearts, because what we're doing by partaking in all of these things as entertainment, we're inwardly saying, that's stupid, or that you're crazy. And so it's being dismissed as harmless. Yeah. And we can just do it and enjoy it and partake it. And then you find it weird that you have conversations with professing Christians that say, yeah, I mean, I was consulting my Ouija board the other day. And it's like, wait, what? Yeah. How did you get there? So let me bring us back. Let me bring us back on track. We have people like Helena Blavatsky, Alice Bailey, Annie Besant. Remember these names? Look them up. Look at what they believed. These people were spiritual individuals, meaning that they engaged in spirituality. And they believed they were engaging in the right spirituality. Another very famous spiritual occult, that's what this is, the occult, occultist was named Aleister Crowley. Now, this dude is just deeply lost.
Yeah, pretty well known too.
Deeply lost.
Celebrated.
He's an occultist, a ceremonial magician. He founded this religion called Thelema. And, he regarded himself as a prophet unto humanity and ushering humanity into the eon of Horus, stuff like that. Now, this is very interesting about what he believed in magic, in his idea of magic. And he would always spell magic in a very archaic way with the K.
Yeah.
So this is something about Aleister Crowley. He believed that sexuality played an important role in his ideas and his practice of it. And he's been described as, it was described as being central to his religion, Thelema. He outlined 3 forms of sex magic. Now, just FYI, sorry, I've already started, but if you have young ears, be mindful as we continue reading. Just be mindful, cover them or pause and wait till you're by yourself. So he outlined 3 forms of sex magic. 1, the autoerotic, homosexual, and heterosexual. And he argued that such acts could be used to focus the magician's will onto a specific goal, such as financial gain, personal creative success. And he treated sex and these sexual rituals as a sacrament. Listen to this next. In that sacrament, they would consume sexual fluids, and that would be interpreted as the Eucharist. Mm-hmm. He said it would be manifested as cakes of light, a biscuit containing either menstrual blood or a mixture of semen and vaginal fluids. The Gnostic Mass is the central religious ceremony within Thelema. So we have this deeply occultic, esoteric belief, deeply occultic, esoteric spirituality, and sex is right there as essential to it. The misuse of sex and the deviation of sex, the pervasion of sex. Perversion also of sex. This is something a historian about Aleister Crowley wrote. To Crowley, the greatest aim of the magician was to merge with a higher power connected to the well springs of the universe, but he did not trouble himself too much to define that power consistently. Sometimes it was God, sometimes the One, sometimes a goddess, and sometimes one's own holy guardian angel or higher self. Higher self sounds familiar, right?
Yeah.
In the last analysis, he was content for the nature of divinity to remain a mystery. As a result, he wrote at times like an atheist, at times like a monotheist, and at others like a polytheist. Now, here is something very interesting about Aleister Crowley. Just like all of these other people, Helena Blavatsky, Annie Besant, Alice Bailey, these people consulted spirits. They would call them ascended masters. They believed that Jesus was just another ascended master. They were into astrology and things like that. Believed that Jesus was just a manifestation of the era of Pisces or the eon of Pisces, whatever. Right. All of those things get tied into another episode. But they consulted spirits. They channeled spirits. They even did automatic writing sometimes when they wrote. That's just to channel a spirit and just have the spirit write through you. And there's something very common about...
That's usually just called channeling, right?
Well, automatic writing specifically involves writing.
Right, but it's a form of channeling. There's a whole bunch of different forms of...
Yeah. And something that is a common denominator about what these spirits would say is they would deny Christ's deity. Mm-hmm. They would deny Christ's deity. Real quick, some books that you can read on this are, Kingdom of the Occult. Oh, wait, I think I have it.
Yeah, it's right there.
Yeah, it's right there. Walter Martin's Kingdom of the Occult. Also, as far as experience with this and delving in this and in New Age and occultism, which there's some overlap there. There's some overlap with those things. They're distinct. I consulted our friend, our professional party pooper today, Marsha Montenegro.
Oh, really?
And I was like, hey, if I made a statement about New Age being a doorway to the occult, do you think that would be accurate? And she said no. She said, no, it wouldn't be. It's too broad of a statement. In fact, there's so much overlap between New Age and occultism that statement would be false. Also, the statement implies that occultism is worse than New Age, which they could be equal, or New Age could actually be worse because it's more subtle.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of people interested in the New Age today. And you see the different doorways. That's why we did an episode on the Enneagram. We have actual issues with the actual Enneagram, which was created through automatic writing. But we also believe it's a doorway. Mm-hmm. And you have to be vigilant as a Christian as you delve into these dark areas that we are told not to.
Right.
Deuteronomy. Israel is told, Deuteronomy 18, Deuteronomy 28, Israel is told not to mess with these things, not because Yahweh is like, nah, I got some other toys for y'all to play with. Don't play with those toys. Saying you are delving into an area you are not equipped to delve in, and it's anti-me.
Right.
And me is your source of life and hope. You need only me, and you are to only be with me.
Yeah.
That's loving.
Ultimately, yeah, it's bad for your soul.
Right. It's a parent squeezing the hand of their child saying, hold on to my hand. Do not run across the street. Mm-hmm. So back to Aleister Crowley. He was a channeler. He channeled a spirit. He channeled an entity multiple times. He referred to this entity as Lamb. In one of his books, that's Lam, by the way.
Oh, okay.
In one of his books, he had attempted to draw this entity that he would channel, that he would summon. And it looks like our popular
Martian.
What they call greens or grays. A gray alien. Big head, black eyes. It's very sinister looking. I got it right here. You can see it.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that all the time.
Yeah.
Looks pretty evil.
Yeah. Now, listen to what he says about just the conversation about these entities and these ascended masters and these teachers that he channels. Today, they call them angels and demons. Tomorrow, they will call them something else. That's very interesting. Now, a mistake would be to read that and call him crazy.
Right.
That'd be a mistake. So now let's get to some more relatively recent things. Obviously not today, but just throughout the course of time. Aleister Crowley, that's a good time ago. Theosophy in 1800s.
He was in 1800s. Aleister Crowley's more recent than that.
Yeah. Let me look that up. No, it's 1800. He was born in 1800s, but he died in 1947. So in that gap.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
In that gap. So yeah, I want to read some researchers. Now, the researchers that I'm going to address are people who have researched and people who have experienced. They have experienced. So some of these things that have happened when it comes to people's experiences and UFO abductions, I'm just going to say UFO for the sake of the conversation.
Yeah,
I actually hate UFO. It means unidentified flying object. It's not a person,
Yeah.
but alien abductions and different UFO encounters. And like I said in the beginning, people would try to have a naturalistic response to it. And so something that's been tied into this conversation is something like sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
Now, from centuries before, people believed that sleep paralysis was a spiritual event. Something spiritual is happening. Leave it to us in our empirical society to say, oh no, we know what's going on. You're sleeping in such a position on your back. Something's happening in your brain, in the stem of your spine, and it leaves this like temporary paralysis and so on, so on, so on, so on. Now, I'm not telling them they're wrong.
Right.
But what they're doing in that explanation is they're also simultaneously
dismissing.
They're dismissing it by defining it as the origin.
Right.
And so they're saying that, hey, this correlates to something that's happening in your body, so therefore that's the cause.
So yeah. I've heard another example of that is people saying, any miracle in the Bible that's explained by science, right? They say, oh, that was an earthquake, or
there was a movie that did that.
There was Noah's Ark, wasn't it?
No, it was Hilary Swank was in it.
Oh,
I forget what it was called.
But yeah, they'll say, oh, well, it was an earthquake, or it was this, or just like science can somehow just pull out of their butts a Big Bang, a meteor came and hit this, right?
Well, there you go, Big Bang.
Right. So they're not, what they're saying is this meteor happened by itself. It was the cause of whatever happened.
Right. Something
couldn't have caused the meteor.
Yeah.
Something couldn't have caused the earthquake, or something couldn't have caused your spine to do whatever it's doing. Well,
that's why there was this false dichotomy between the Christian faith and science.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like their opposition.
Yeah. Like
to
they're enemies and they're in opposition to one another. And people were battling based off of that premise just because someone says, hey, we see evidence that there was a Big Bang. Christianity says, okay, we know the one who banged it. Mm-hmm. That's what it's saying. That's all that's saying. So where was I? Oh, so experience. Now, first, we have some experience a little bit.
Yeah.
Sleep paralysis. Have you experienced that before?
Yeah, multiple times.
Give some context and briefly describe what it was like.
Like some context of like what I was doing? Or?
No. Context of where you were in your life. I think that's important.
Oh, right. Yeah.
What I'm saying?
I remember when we were living in Baltimore still, and I was living with my then girlfriend, who is now my wife. But I was living with her. And this was right when we had made the decision to move down here to join Peace City Church. And when I met with the pastor, Peace City Church, one of the things that we spoke about was where I was living. And when I told him, like, he was like, I told him I was, I was living with my girlfriend. He said, well, what do you think about that? Like, what do you think God says about that? And I already knew. It's like, yeah, we shouldn't be doing that. And so when we made that decision, obviously I couldn't move out right away. So I started sleeping on the couch in the living room. And that's when they started. That's when like it was a string of these sleep paralysis things. Mm. And I was like, all right, I hear your spine thing, right? I hear all of that. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm like, all right, I want to make sure that this is what I know it is. Like, I want to make sure that I'm not dreaming, that I'm not, whatever. So it would happen almost every night around the same time too. I would lay on the couch and I was like, I'm not going to sleep on my back. They're saying that you sleep on your back a certain way, your spine does this. I'm not going to sleep on my back. I would sleep on my side or my stomach. And it didn't matter. I would see like the room would start to close in on me. Everything would get dark. Mm-hmm. And so I would have we had a projector in our living room and I would leave that on just to see how dark the room gets. Yeah. Because all the lights were off in the living room and the projector is bright white, whatever, it's changing colors, but it's a light essentially. And my dog was in the living room with me. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna put my phone right here, my keys right here. So that when I wake up, I remember like, oh yeah, I put my phone here. This isn't a dream. I can reach for my phone. I can reach for my keys, all this stuff. So I'm laying there and I see the room. And it is almost when you're like, you are about to be asleep. It's never like you're wide awake and it happens to you. You're about to fall asleep and something wakes you up and you can't move. It feels like something's sitting on you. Something's covering your mouth because you can't speak. You can barely breathe, but you're aware. So the first thing I did was I looked around and I'm like, all right, there's my phone. Like my phone's right there. My keys are right there. This is real. Jesus. And so I would see the room would just get dark. It was almost like the projector wasn't even on. Mm. And it's, most times, as soon as I started praying silently, whatever, it would go away. You see the lights, the projector would get wide again and I can move again. I can speak again. It would literally only last for about maybe 7 to 10 seconds. Yeah. And it would happen almost every night for like 2 weeks.
Mm. Yeah. The same thing happened to me right before I moved to Silver Spring to start ministry. Mm. I was actually in mom and dad's basement. Ugh. Yeah, I know. But that's before it was like a bunch of stuff down there.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying it's dark down there.
Oh yeah. Well, the light was on.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, the light was on. And that's the first time that it ever happened to me. And it was the same type of thing. And I remember thinking like, wow, is this that thing that people are talking about? But then it started getting dark. And I can't even actually explain the dark because the light was still on.
Yeah, you could see the illumination.
Yeah.
But there's no light coming from it.
But I could feel like, it's almost like you think about a movie.
Like Sixth Sense?
No, just a movie when the camera pans close, zooms up on a person. That's what it feels like the room is doing to you.
It's like closing in on you, yeah.
It's like closing in. And I did the same thing. I prayed. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I got pushed up.
Yeah.
You know,
be sweating.
Yeah, my whole shirt was drenched. Now, people who know me are like, "Oh, Brandon, I mean, you always be sweating, dog." Nah, that's not the case. I don't sweat laying down unless it's in the summertime. But it wasn't in the summertime, and but yeah, and so that really blew my mind.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, though, it gave me confidence too.
Yeah, it really did. Yeah.
That even as we engage this topic, there's nothing we have to fear.
Mm-hmm.
This is information sharing for people who are susceptible, people who are not in Christ, and I'll share that towards the end. But this conversation that we're having right now, this is for you. This is for you. This is a warning. This is a cry for you to listen to what we're saying and heed what we're saying, because there are dark forces at work here. So we talked about sleep paralysis. Now, and you also mentioned your dog wilding out.
Oh, yeah.
Did you mention that?
I mentioned that he was with me. I didn't mention him. Yeah. So he would look at the corner. Like, so there would be the darkness would come from behind me. Like, so it was like if I'm laying on the couch, the door is to my right. Mm-hmm. Projector is furthest away from the door. So the light is shining away from the door. So it's already dark in the corner. Mm-hmm. But that darkness would just cover the whole room from the corner. And my dog would stand up and look at the corner and just start pacing. And I'm like, yeah, that's when you know he doesn't have sleep paralysis.
Right. Right.
He doesn't. He's looking me in the face and I can't move. But yeah, so he was freaking out because he sensed something was happening in the room.
Mm. Yeah, so I want to read a couple of quotes from people who have written in books, who have talked about this stuff throughout the years. And there are some things that have been dismissed about it. Meanwhile, it needs to be revisited.
Yeah.
Not only does it need to be revisited because the conversation is prevalent, but also, like I said, the ones who are prevalent in the conversation are like, we got nothing. Mm-hmm. We got nothing. And so if I would add to that, you have nothing from a naturalistic perspective, from a naturalistic worldview.
Right.
There's a man named Whitley Strieber, who is an author. I don't want to get all of his things wrong here. Yeah, he would write horror novels, but he also wrote of experience. He was one who, or is one, he's still alive, who claimed to be abducted by aliens. And I think that when people get that, when people hear that, they hear that somebody was beamed up to light, and
but that's what they wanted us to believe. They want us to believe that those things are so fictional.
Yeah,
and we see it. They show us it in movies.
Yeah, they're beamed up to some ship, and they're
Star
operating
Trek,
them on the table.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
They're operating on them on the table. But I want to share some aspects and some characteristics of these experiences. Mm-hmm. Now, he's going to give us I'm going to give you an exact quote from him. This is in a book he wrote called Communion on page 25. He says, "I became entirely given over to extreme dread. The fear was so powerful that it seemed to make my personality completely evaporate. Whitley ceased to exist. What was left was a body in a state of raw fear so great that it swept about me like a thick, suffocating curtain, turning paralysis into a condition that seemed close to death. I died, and a wild animal appeared in my place." And then in a book called Transformation, he actually expounds on this experience of his abduction on page 44. He says, "Increasingly, I felt as if I were entering a struggle that might even be more than life or death. It might be a struggle for my soul, my essence, or whatever part of me might have reference to the eternal. There are worse things than death, I suspected. So far, the word demon had never been spoken among scientists and doctors who were working with me. Alone at night, I worried about the legendary cunning of demons. At the very least, I was going stark, raving mad." Now, there's a man named Dr. John Mack who is neutral. He didn't claim that this was foolish. He didn't have any experiences of his own. He just decided that as a skeptic, When people were making these claims that they were being abducted by aliens, that these things were happening, he decided to go and do some research. And these are some of the findings he has, and some of the things that he said. And so he was in an interview. I'm going to read this. He was in an interview with Nova Online. It's a PBS interview that he was doing. And he was asked, so from your findings, would you say that this phenomenon is literally physical or is it psychological? And he said, yes, it's both. Yeah. Quote, it's both literally, physically happening to a degree. And also, it's also some kind of psychological experience occurring and originating perhaps in another dimension. And so the phenomenon stretches us, or it asks us to stretch to open to realities that are not simply the literal physical world, but to extend to the possibility that there are other unseen realities from which our consciousness, our, if you will, learning processes over the past several hundred years have closed off. And so there's a worldview that matches what he's saying.
Yeah.
There's a worldview that matches what he's saying. There's another one, a prominent man, Dr. Jacques Vallée. And he's a computer scientist, venture capitalist, internet pioneer, but he's also a ufologist. A word that I find interesting because it's like you're using ologist with the O that means object. And how they get this, they just made it up. But he's also an astronomer. And so this is what he's saying from his findings. This is also a researcher. He's looked into these things. And these are some either pre-conclusions or conclusions he's gotten from his research. Human beings are under the control of a strange force that bends them in absurd ways, forcing them to play a role in a bizarre game of deception. The UFO phenomenon represents a manifestation of reality that transcends our current understanding of physics. The UFOs are physical manifestations that cannot be understood apart from their psychic and symbolic reality. What we see in the effect here is not an alien invasion. It is a control system which acts on humans and uses humans. And he says that in a book called Messengers of Deception on page 20. And then the second part of that is on page 209. So these people, these voices have existed.
Yeah, for a long time.
You know, and what they say, the insights they give into this ufology does not involve materialism. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, the reason why prominent voices right now are throwing their hands up while still admitting that this phenomenon exists is because the things that people even see on camera with the fuzzy pixelated videos defy human gravity, natural physics, defies all of these things. Mm-hmm. So even these pictures that sort of look like metal objects, they're doing things that metal can't do. Yeah. And here's some characteristics of UFO contact that have just been gathered over time with people who have told stories. Dog and cattle have like a preemptive response where they notice something before a human notices something. Mm-hmm. They begin to get frantic and wild out. There's loss of memory from people who have claimed to be abducted by aliens. Loss of time or sense of time. There's nausea. There's temporary blindness, temporary paralysis, sensations of heat, the nightmares, burns and wounds. There's been swelling, diarrhea, even death. You know one that's actually rather common with people who have had an abduction experience? Sexual
diarrhea.
Assault.
Oh.
Sexual assault.
Yeah.
It's a sexual experience.
Yeah.
That's one thing that we pointed out from that one movie that was very sinister.
It's a second one. There's two of them now.
Really?
I can't remember. It was like a book that they read and it was a spell. And then if you were possessed, basically it was rape.
Wait, what movie? I'm talking about the end of the, or what's it called? End of time or end of the world or something like that? With all the frat brother guys. What are their names? Seth Rogen and all of them.
Oh, you're talking about This Is the End.
This Is the End.
Right.
What were you talking about?
I mean, they were making a satire about other horror movies where any possession is always in the form of rape.
Yeah.
So,
you're saying This Is the End? Or are you talking about an actual?
So an actual horror movie. I can't remember what it was called, but it was a group of teenagers who found a book in the basement. They read it. It was some spells, and then when they read the spells, bad things started happening in the house, and a girl got possessed, but she got possessed through this demon entering her through her vagina.
Yeah, yeah. And so there's, there is like, you think about the studies of Aleister Crowley and his occultic practices and things like that. It's dark.
Yeah.
It's dark, and we're not to play around with it. So there was something that Jacques Vallée mentioned as far as psychic abilities in our reality. And so that plays into some of the things that in testimonies of some of these pilots who have encountered these unidentified flying objects. I'm going to play a clip. Let me see if I have it up. And there's someone talking about it here.
The bigger picture, what's going on? And you said, think of it this way, James, is an omnipresent intelligence, okay, that has the ability to manifest itself in a multitude of ways. It's nuts and bolts, but it's also psychic. That Fravor talked about that object went to his cap point. I mean, he said it made the hair on the back of his neck stand up straight because those coordinates weren't known.
Explain what you're saying to people. So this is a standalone podcast, so they know what you're talking about.
So David Fravor, who was the Navy pilot that had that dramatic encounter with a Tic Tac off the coast of San Diego back in 2004, that was also documented with the radar and visual confirmation, but also filmed on another subsequent flight just moments afterwards. But he said that this object, first of all, reacted to him when he was flying down to intercept it, but then after it flew rings around him, I mean, he said it made a joke out of the fastest plane that Navy had at the time. It went to their cap point, which is the predetermined Latin longitude strategic point of the military exercise. So how on earth, he said, how on earth could this object know where that point was? So what I'm saying is there's a psychic, it's a nuts and bolts phenomenon, but it's also psychic, is what I'm saying.
So what he's talking about is a pilot that saw this flying object in the sky, tracked it. It started mimicking its movements. He decided to go away. There's coordinates that he's supposed to go to that no one else knows, but this object was there before he got there. And so they're like, what in the world? And so that's in addition to this object doing things that materials can't do. Yeah. These objects are faster than the speed of sound. Yeah. And so now in a materialistic world, if that happens, a phenomenon called a sonic boom would happen. That doesn't happen. As a matter of fact, it doesn't even disrupt our atmosphere. No. When they move. And so you can find these things. You can find these testimonies. They're available now. And go look at those. How are we doing on time?
Right under an hour.
Okay, so we got to wrap up. We're going to save the rest for part 2. But I do want to address one thing, because I've heard from Christians in this conversation that, the way that they kind of like make themselves feel better is to say, hey, look, if aliens exist, it doesn't harm the Christian faith. And that's true. Right. That's absolutely true. It doesn't harm the Christian faith. It would just mean that aliens exist. But then there are some other problems that come in. You got to start talking about depravity. You got to start talking about the gospel, right? You got to start talking about restoration of the entire world. Outside of all those things, we know, based on Colossians 1, that they would all be a creation of Jesus. He's the one who created them. Right. But it still doesn't follow because, and we would not promote that, because what we are going to be showing and what we've showed in this episode and we're going to show in the next episode is that you need to stay away from these types of things. Right. That people get drawn into this and they want to start like diving deeper into it and it becomes fascinating. Stay away from it. It's dark. It's dark. It's way darker than obviously E.T., but it's even darker than the idea of extraterrestrial beings existing on different planets. Yeah. It's darker. It's darker. And you get to these people who delved into these occultic practices and these secret mystery schools and different esoteric belief systems, and they channel these entities. And some of these entities they refer to as ascended masters, but their pictures look like aliens. And meanwhile, what the message that these aliens have to share is the that Jesus Christ is not Lord.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And that he's not Lord.
We're gonna talk about the fourth con next episode.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We or if you had wanted to say something quickly.
Nah, I don't.
Because I did want to. Okay.
It's kind of in the middle of the idea of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll look into that. We'll look into more testimonies as well. So stay tuned for our next episode. And we thank you guys for joining us on this episode of Black and Blurred, where you're guaranteed to hear one of two things: our humble opinion
Or the facts.
Holler at us.